want to add something here?
I just wanted to respond to the second questioner on the question about whether there are examples of successful sharing of curriculum, shining out peace ambassadors. And for me, a good example of that would be a network of 7 universities under Rotary Centers for International Studies in Peace and Conflict Resolution, one of which is right here in Bangkok, the University of Lowell, Duke University and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, International Christian University in Tokyo, Japan, Universidad del Salvador in Argentina, Bradford University in England, and also University of California, Berkeley, and lastly, University of Queensland. What they do basically is offer master's degrees to students from all over the world. I don't exactly know whether they have a specific harmonization of the curriculum, but what happens is that once you become a beneficiary of this particular program, then you are inducted into a network of alumni, and you're constantly in touch with what other graduates are doing. They also meet every 2 years. They have peace symposiums, one of which just was recently held in Birmingham, UK. And it's a great forum for sharing perspectives, sharing experiences from all over the world. So the answer is yes, and things can only get better, especially considering what UNESCO intends to do. UNESCO is at a very unique position because of its mandate. So I expect that we are going to hear more collaborations taking place across the continent. We can only get there.
Okay.
Just to summarize a few responses, I think we're, to go with what you're saying, we're living in a transformation. Not only is technology being transformed in the network, but the whole model of which universities were built on and thought, which comes out of the Enlightenment, that everything can be solved by reason and technique, is in a crisis. And what we've neglected in Western education is what every tradition, whether it be Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, Taoist, whatever one we do, is that the fundamental part of education is a struggle against your own ego. Now, that sort of thing, if peace is going to be achieved, people have to deal with their own egotism. And how do we include that in a rational, scientific university? I mean, how can we do that in a common way? Well, one way is that what's key, I think, and what comes out of this sort of conference is understanding each other's traditions, and that's where technology can come across. That the tradition of Islam, of dealing with a problem, might be quite different from a Buddhist one, but if you actually deal with a practical problem, you actually get on technology where people can communicate with each other on Facebook, and they talk about a specific, how do I deal with this particular situation in my life, you might find that their solutions are much more similar than you think if you look at it from a purely doctrinal point of view. And one of the aims would be to build this idea, which you might call, where people from different traditions can sort of resolve and talk about ethical problems in their framework and try to find common ground. The second is, to answer that thing, it's true that, that's also true at the level of theory. That is that we've completely ignored the great traditional theories of communication. The Yoga Sutra, Patanjali is a text about communication in many ways, but where's that taught? Not in India much, in communications departments. It's still based on an Aristotelian idea of communication, if you like. So therefore there's a need to resolve that. That needs to be done by communications education, needs to become comparative in every aspect. So our undergraduate and graduate programs, we've tried to be comparative. We begin with looking how different alphabets are developed. We begin with thinking about a newspaper is not the same thing in each country. But you cannot be naive. Media have interest. One man controls Star Network, Fox Network, the Times, the Wall Street Journal, one man. And you cannot deny that these people have agendas. And so what people have to be taught, through a cross-cultural perspective, through communicating with ICTs, is how to read that media. So, how to have what we call media literacy. The essential thing is to build this media literacy, to use the new network communication, to build media literacy so that people can talk on Facebook through English, increasingly a common language, to ask people who are in that situation what's happening. What is that situation? A lived experience of it.
Thank you. We only have time for 2 more questions, way in the back, and then it's lunchtime. So the 2 in the way back.
We could have just going to start first with my pitch.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And Gurp from the Bangkok Coast. I'd just like to respond to the question from Mr. Kalinga, my colleague from Sri Lanka. This issue of stereotyping clearly is something that we can all sympathize with, and particularly I had mentioned it yesterday in terms of his experience in Canada. But I was keen. It was keen to see that Mr. Kalinga referred that he was probably being mistaken for a Pakistani Islamic terrorist, whereas I would probably venture to add that he was probably being mistaken for a Sri Lankan Tamil Tiger terrorist. And it was interesting to see that it was this whole issue of Pakistani Islamic terrorism sort of seems to leap into people's mind whenever the word terrorism seems to occur. And really the question that media practitioners need to ask is, why has this word Islamic terrorism become conjoined twins? You can't disassociate one from the other. Even in India today, one studies the media, there's a present problem right now with a group called the Maoists and the Naxalites. But when I read the media, the Maoists and the Naxalites are referred to as militants or insurgents. The word terrorist is usually only referred to the Muslims in Kashmir. This is very obvious. I read 14 newspapers through India a day virtually, and it's quite obvious to see the distinction between the two. So from an aiming perspective, it perhaps needs a significant study as to why these 2 words have been put together, and what role has been played by the man who owns all these newspapers and television stations in creating that phenomena of Islamic terrorism being conjoined twins, and what can be done to separate those 2 words.